Tomorrow, America votes. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down one-on-one with Larry Kobrovsky of the Charleston County Republican Party and Brady Quirk-Garvan of the Charleston County Democratic Party.
It is so good to see you, gentlemen.
It's good to see you too. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Anytime.
Thanks for having us at the office.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed. It's been a year since I've actually interviewed you guys together.
Yeah.
And at the time, I went back and watched the interview, was I believe June of
Right.
2015, and you labelized the presidential season at that time as the silly season. And I'm wondering, as this particular presidential season is ending, Larry, what still plays in your mind?
Well, first, thanks. It's hard to believe that much time has gone by. I think I can speak for Brady. It probably surpassed our expectations in that regard, right? Well, you're probably speaking to two good people in this because we're both, have probably political junkies, and we have a lot of stake as chairman
Right.
for Charleston County because it's a volatile time and it could go either way.
Right.
And I'm sure we both put everything into this, and we're speaking, after the primaries, which were one cycle of insanity, and then there's another one with the general election.
Right.
So I think we can agree it's like a time like no other in our country's history, at least in our lifetimes that we know about.
Right.
Right.
And the tensions are very high, and the stakes are high.
Right.
And probably never before has either side so defined the other as the devil in terms of what is at stake for the country and how they define each candidate.
Right.
So I think that really is a remarkable thing.
Yeah.
Brady?
I'd agree. I mean, I think the past year has been a roller coaster just in terms of exactly as Larry said. I think the last year the country has become more polarized and more divided.
Okay.
And I think for both of us, one of the thoughts and concerns that we think about is, after Election Day, regardless of who wins, we're going to have a new president.
Sure.
And what do we do as a country to move forward and try and unite in some way? Not that you're going to convince everyone that,
Right.
the other party's right, but what do you do to bring people together to try and get things moving forward again and have some unity in the country? Because I think Larry's right. I think this last year has sort of we've seen a hyper divide between the parties, and so to me the question is sort of what happens the day after. But it's been an amazing year, and
Right.
remarkable to think that it's been that long.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that we were this there a year ago. I think, and I've gotten to know Brady, and I think that we have profoundly different ways of looking at the country and what the issues are, but you model civility. You can disagree, but
Right.
be civil.
Right.
It doesn't mean you disagree any less, but you should do it in a civil fashion because people take cues from that.
Absolutely.
And I think that and also what I've noticed that we won the heavy door-to-door campaign. I've been going door-to-door for
Wow.
weeks, and you get a real sense of what my side's thinking. But as I like to talk to whoever I encounter, because
Sure.
you get a sense of things, and I think it's a culmination of people, they used to read the newspapers, the same shows, and that no longer is true. So everybody is watching their own thing,
Right.
and that's also contributed. They don't hear the other side, and they don't hear anything but what reinforces their own feelings. I think to get Brady's thoughts on that, and that matters because then it gets people more even hyper partisan than they would be if they saw both sides.
Yeah.
I think that contributes to it.
I'd agree. I think social media plays into that you follow people
Right.
who reinforce your ideas,
Right.
and so.
But even the shows that you watch,
The shows you
TV
watch, all
shows,
of that.
each one has its partisan
Right.
political
And I think
arm.
what you see now, it's interesting when I think back about prior presidential years,
Right.
there's been a lot of discussion about how do you persuade independent voters. I've heard less about that this year because I think what's happened is this notion of a independent or moderate voter is kind of not disappearing, but there's fewer and fewer of them,
Right.
and this has become more about turnout for both sides. That how do you motivate your base to get out and vote? And I think that fuels it. I think it adds
Right.
to it the divide in, are you watching MSNBC or are you watching Fox? Who's on your Facebook feed?
Yeah.
Those sort of things. So it's been a I think transformative campaign cycle.
I think there's other things that play too. I'm a little bit older, but when I grew up, the people that were running for office when I was maybe in junior high or high school were all from World War II generation. So even though they might have been different, they served in the army together in a common cause. So you never thought that you're all part of the same team. You might look at the world differently, but it wasn't like the end of the world if the other side won, because you had shared similar experiences and nobody doubted each other's patriotism because they often were in the armed services. Together, both candidates had been in the military and serving the country, and we really don't have that commonality anymore.
Let me turn to the Clinton email investigation.
Okay,
Obviously,
sure.
last night the FBI cleared her for the second time. As we sit here right now, what do you read into that?
Well, I can tell you that the intensity of feeling on my side is like off the charts. That the Republicans, for the most part, and I encounter this is a genuine feeling
Okay.
that she is a criminal, and that had anybody else done that, they'd be in jail. If they were in the military and had been so careless in national security and classified things, that they'd be in jail. So there's the element that they feel that there's one set of rules for the ruling class, one for the others, but even beyond that is the Clinton Foundation, which incenses people more than the emails, because they feel that it was, using her office for personal gain, and whether her husband was getting hundreds of millions of dollars to be the honorary chairman of some school for profit in Saudi Arabia or Qatar, and giving all that money for speeches, that there's a real sense that there's almost like she's part of a cartel. If they get back in, it's like a license to steal, that there's really a sense that a lot of them will go over hot coals to vote tomorrow. And that's the perception, and it's so strong, it's really almost overwhelming.
Well, and I think that to add on to that, I think I don't disagree that that's how a lot of Republicans feel, but I think one of the divides too for Democrats and for a large swath of America, facts matter here. So despite all the feelings, the FBI has cleared her. So when they talk about two different sets of rules, the law enforcement agency that oversees this investigated it and it cleared her. And when there's this talk of the Clinton Foundation and people enriching their own pockets, they're talking about people and organizations who donated to a nonprofit charity.
Okay.
This is not money that was going into Bill Clinton's pocket, it was going to a charity. So I think one of the things that I think has become true is those feelings that Larry talked about are absolutely real. And when I talk with Republicans, that's what they feel, but feelings only get you so far. At some point, the facts matter, and when the FBI has now cleared her twice, the Clintons have been through investigation after investigation, and they have yet to come up with anything of substance on them. And so I think, for Democrats, there is this sense too. It motivates Democrats in a way to say, why do they continually bring up these investigations? Why does Trey Gowdy hold, hearings after hearings and then end up doing nothing with the committee? So I think, for Democrats, it also serves as a motivator, but this is one of those issues that adds to that partisan divide, but that's what I think.
Well, I think that I understand that, and I've talked to Democrats
Sure.
who I can confirm what Brady's saying, that I hear that from Democrats, but we disagree, I think, what the facts are. I think that my understanding, the Justice Department, made them step down from the Clinton Foundation investigation. And I would say that it's not, I understand that Hillary's a very smart woman, and they have very smart lawyers that try to set these things up. But you had Cheryl Mills or Yuma Abedin, you had the same people working at the Clinton Foundation as top aides at the same time when you had them working for the Secretary of State. They might have had different titles, and I think in our perspective, the facts do show that all the money flowed from these foreign countries, whether it was Saudi Arabia, the Russian oligarchs, whenever there was something about uranium deals or about getting clearance for schools for profit in the Arab countries in the Middle East. It was always then when the husband got hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on honorary fees. And I guess it's kind of like when you give something to a spouse, we think that's giving it to the person. And my fear is that and even worse, and as we look at it, is I'm an attorney, and when she got the congressional subpoena for the emails, they eliminated with hammers and bleaches, whatever,
yeah,
and,
right.
and all this stuff.
And so they followed protocol, because protocol said that you're supposed to smash devices with hammers, you're supposed to destroy them both physically and wipe them. So again, it sounds dramatic, but they were following protocol.
But our thing is, and I hear that, but it was after you get the subpoena. And my sense is, Brady, if any criminal in America who gets a subpoena or any attorney in a civil action, they can destroy the evidence with a hammer or bleach it and say, no, the president did it, why can't I? And from our perspective, it's like, geez, the Leona Helmsley of politics. There's one set of rules,
But
a
that,
little bit, and it goes.
but that's I mean that's
And the other thing, Brady,
hyperbole that's adding to
right,
this. I mean,
and one mistake, she, as smart as she is, and they have a political machine, and certainly, as you know, there is no political machine with Trump. It's kind of ad hoc. And when she's called the people for Trump, deplorables and irredeemables and racialholics or homophobe, whatever the things, that was, that was guaranteeing that those people are going to go for hot coals to vote against her because they feel humiliated, disrespected, and that's,
sure, but I also think, again, this goes back
she said
to
half, which is tens of millions of people.
Sure, and I think what she was talking about is the fact that, the KKK newspaper has endorsed Donald Trump, that Donald Trump has said that Mexicans are rapists and most of them are bad people. So I think what she was trying to point out was, again, the facts that say that Donald Trump genuinely believes that there is a problem with a vast swath of America that includes women, people who aren't white, all sorts of people who aren't practicing Christians. That's concerning to us, and so I think she was trying to call that out, and I think she did a good job of pointing that out, that we can't let Donald Trump say one thing to his base to rally them and then turn around and say, oh no, I was just talking in coded language, it's okay. We need to call out that kind of rhetoric, and it was deplorable. And those comments that he's made about Hispanics and about women and about Muslims are deplorable. And to me, it is reassuring that we have someone who's going to be our next president who will stand up and say that.
Well, I look at that, Brady, I look at when she was running and it served her interest, she called young black males, super predators.
Well, she wasn't running.
And she said they should be brought to heel.
And she's apologized for that.
Heel. That's pretty, but from our perspective, I realize it's different times. That was done when it suited her political purposes. And then to say you're worried about language.
Well, she apologized. Trump never apologized, and that was 15 years ago. And the world has changed, and her policies have changed.
Right.
Donald Trump has been unrepentant and not apologized, and continues to hold these beliefs.
Well, and I look at the end of the campaign for the Democrats is race baiting because they're trying to rally their base. I mean, that's how I look at it when they talk. And when President Obama starts talking with a dialect and trying to say that, to me, with the Ku Klux Klan thing, if there's any way that they wanted to help Hillary, it was to do that. I mean, they're not, I'm sure.
But they felt that he represented their best values.
Who knows?
No, that's what they said.
They did it. If anybody would know that the single biggest thing they could do to help Hillary would be to do that and say that. And I take that. I remember, I ran for Congress as a Tea Party candidate, and I remember that they had a group of people like storm outside the White House with a Confederate flag and looking around to make sure the media was looking at them. To this day, I'm convinced that was a provocation and paid operatives of the Democratic Party to try to say this is who our opponents are. Because I can say that, I've been going door to door in politics the last 2 years. The only racist comment I ever encountered from anybody on the stump was a very heavy Hillary. She was for Hillary. The guy ripped up my thing as a Republican, and we were talking, and I went to law school in New York, and he said, oh, did you go to New York, NY Jew? When I was Jewish. So I took that as offensive, but that was the only thing. Now, you can take single things out, but I don't expect in any way that that's reflective of all Clinton supporters, but anything, you can take one lunatic, and I was at the Yorktown when Trump appeared because I was neutral, but I went to every candidate, and I thought, well, boy, these people look like they're organized. They came in a bus to try to disrupt the thing. They dispersed themselves through the crowd, and every 3 minutes somebody would yell or scream. It was like begging to be, to provoke and cause something. It turns out, I said, these must be paid operatives. Remember, we had this discussion, and I feel vindicated because don't they have the thing where the Democrats actually paid people to disrupt things to provoke fights?
No, I mean,
wasn't that what came through in those interviews?
No, so Democrats pay people. We go out and knock on doors, and we canvass, and we do all the things a field operation does. But I also want to go back. I think this is one of the things that really sticks for Democrats when you said at the end of this that Democrats and Hillary were we're race baiting.
I think
and,
they are.
Well, but here's my
Because
issue.
that's
Well,
to rally their base.
yeah,
they
but
can
let
only
me,
do
but let
is
me
say
finish.
the other
It's,
side is
when we talk
racist.
about our base, it's not saying the other side's racist. What we're doing, I've seen when Tim Kaine goes out and speaks in Spanish, people say he's pandering. When she goes and when Hillary talks to the NAACP, they say it's race baiting. What this really is Democrats are talking to the new America. They're talking to the America that is our future, that is younger, that is less white, that is more open about LGBT people. So they are talking to and talking with and engaging a diverse America. And I think what drives people crazy, and this is true even of Republicans, when you call that race baiting, it puts Republicans more and more in that box of being, racist old white men. And so I think the problem is whenever you throw out race baiting, when all this is really trying to recognize and talk and live in the America that exists today instead of the America of the 1950s, I honestly think it hurts the Republican brand because it's not race baiting. It's talking about the issues that matter today and to the population that's out there and voting. When we look at who's going to go vote this election, it is tomorrow, which is crazy that it's so soon, but it's a different makeup. But I know you've got.
Well, let me respond to that, Brady. I think if you define it like that, what I'm referring to as race baiting is when President Obama goes in North Carolina, talks in more of a dialect and says that the other side is part of the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan is going to be in power if you vote for Trump. Because that kind of stuff is trying to whip up your base to fear the others and say that these others are racists or monsters. And that seems to be the approach because they're trying to stir feelings up, emotional feelings about the other side. And if you look at any black conservative who's running for office, the fear that the Democrats have most is to destroy them. If you go back to, Clarence Thomas, it's kind of like that's the base and you have to destroy those who appear. You said that what I perceived on we see things through different lenses.
Clearly.
And I see that with Democrats that, if you go to religion, and you're probably a Republican or a conservative, and among a lot of liberals, it's like their politics is their religion, so if you oppose them, they think you're evil. That's the sense I get from talking to people. It's not just you're wrong, but because their religion is their politics, that somehow when you oppose them, you're on the side of darkness. And that's the sense I get. I mean, that's how I interpret it.
I mean,
you would interpret it differently.
Yeah, well, and all I would say is there are plenty of people of a variety of faiths who are passionate believers in their faith that are strongly identify as Democrats. I mean, I think there are, to me, that's an unfair assertion. But yeah.
That's just my perception.
Yeah.
Oh, let me turn quickly from Washington to the Low Country.
Yeah.
Because there are a couple of headline-making races here.
Sure.
Describe to me in one word.
One word, okay. Let's see if we can keep to that.
Alice Wakefield versus Wade Cogswell.
To be honest, it's a Republican district, so I don't know how much it matters who's running, because the demographics and the vote traditionally has been so overwhelmingly Republican. And I'd like to segue into something, even though I'm a Republican chairman, I wish they had districts that were not gerrymandered racially, because what happens, people don't listen to each other. I think if you had more equal districts that both sides, they tend to only hear who's in power when districts are gerrymandered on a racial basis, so people don't hear other people's concerns. And that's why you find countywide candidates actually have to listen to everybody and could be more responsive. When you make districts so polarized politically, I think it's destructive of our system and a way of life, because people are not exposed to views different than theirs. I think that's important that they should be, because it makes you think. People can always learn or be better educated if you hear a perspective other than what you've been always hearing.
So if Larry got that many words, I'll try and keep it to 3. Competition is good.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's true, but go ahead.
And let me turn to Lynn Bennett versus Bob Alden.
I would say the same.
I would say the same as well.
Mary Tinkler versus Andy Smith.
Well, I think that I'm making it a few words.
Oh,
The
sure,
RMC race, thanks to Brady, was a real wake-up call. I would think that they did us a favor, because we left nothing unturned. We treated what happened to Charlie Lybrand as a wake-up call. We've done everything known to mankind to ensure victory for Andy Smith in terms of He's a great treasurer. We wanted everybody to know that. He has experience. So who knows what can happen. If there was God forbid, a Hillary landslide, it wouldn't matter how good of a job he did. But we have gone all out in every way we've known to try to ensure that he wins, because people would know what a great job he's doing, whatever their politics are.
Sure. Well, and I always like hearing them talk about experience matters, because I assume that means they're going to vote for Hillary now as the most experienced, but no, I'm kidding. but I think in that race, I think Larry's exactly right. I think the dynamics in the county are shifting and changing, and that, that's going to play a heavy role in this.
Right.
And I think that, if we run down the road 5-10 years from now, if I was someone sitting in a countywide seat right now that was a Republican, I would be scared, and I would be rightfully scared that they're going to have serious competition in future elections, and I think Democrats are ready to take over this county and provide some solid leadership.
Well, I would look at the indicators of what happens locally tomorrow. Anything can happen, because we don't know, people will be hearing this afterwards, so we would take a victory. I mean, if we regain control of county council, we expect that Republicans will retain or take over, will pick up a county council seat with Moody.
Right.
We expect that, so Republicans will regain control of county council. We'll pick up 1 or 2 House seats, so our share of the legislative delegation will increase, and we'll also win overwhelmingly our countywide offices. And we hope, I've promoted the campaign as though the fate of the country depends on us winning Charleston County for the Republicans, and I think that one thing we did really different this time is really went all out on early voting, every way we knew, through personal contact, mailers, and I'd like to think that the increase by almost 65-66% in early voting was a result of our efforts. Brady, I'm sure will differ, but we've done everything known to mankind to let people know this time, because they showed us, they always beat us on that, and I think we showed that it paid off.
Yeah, and I think I'd agree. Both sides are trying to increase early voting, and I think the other part that changed too is, so in the past there's been one location in the county to vote early. This year, with satellite locations in West Ashley and Seacoast and Mount Pleasant, it's made it so much easier. And so I think it's a combo of absolutely efforts by both parties. But those satellite locations, I think, have been game changers. And to me, the question is, right now you still need to go and give one of 14 reasons why you're voting early. And I think what I would hope is that, seeing as it's been a success, by Republicans here in Charleston, that in the next legislative session they would promote no-fault voting, which is what most other states have that have early voting, to say for a week or 2 weeks you can go and vote early just as you would on election day. But to me, the more people who are registered to vote that vote, that's a plus for democracy. That has nothing to do with being a Democrat. But I would agree. I think the turnout in absentee voting is enormous this year in Charleston County, and I think that's something that we agree on, that early voting is a positive.
Yes and no. I mean, we're doing it because we've seen what happens. We always were beating that.
They're copycats,
Well, that's, in this case, with the Charlie Lyran thing and early voting, we do owe that to you, because it was wake-up calls. But I'm a proponent that all Americans should go to make a decision on one day. I remember going with my parents to vote. I'd hate to lose that, because once you go to early voting for any reason, then they're going to say that, I predict that you're being unfair, or they'll use every adjective if you don't increase it from 1 week to 2 weeks. In every election, it'll be election season as opposed to election day, and that's my worry. Just like that'll be the way. This, like with the minimum wage, it'll be $15 now, and then they'll say we're being unjust, or whatever adjective they want to use, unless it's $20, $25. It'll keep. It's a political means, and that's what's going to happen in the early voting. I think it'll keep on going, and then they'll say, well, why can't you just vote right after the nomination? There's no real reason you could make a distinction for the nomination.
I'll make you a promise, though. If you guys, if Republicans come out and say that you'll give a week of early voting, including the weekend, I won't bring up expanding it for a decade.
You might not. No,
I might, and I'll
you might
encourage
not, Brady,
Democrats. But no, I mean, if
you see my concern.
Yeah, but if you give us a week of early voting, then I think we would happily drop it for a long time.
But I think anything that starts out like that, it's just the nature of it. Because remember that the income tax started out, they made an amendment, I think it was 1913, and it applied only to 1/2% of the population, and you had to make over $1 million. And we know what it's like now, so anything that becomes something is always going to be expanded because those who do it will find a way to do it. I think Brady may say that, and I'm sure he would mean it, but in a little bit of time, we'll be all the way to the nomination, and then it'll be, why can't, if I'm a Democrat or Republican, why can't I mail it in advance of that? I know what I am. So I think if you deviate too far from Election Day, and a lot can happen, it needs to be all Americans making individual decisions at the same time. And, you know, I would hate that, it's just a philosophical difference on that. I would think a solution would be make it a holiday so that, like a national holiday, so nobody has to work that day.
Are you talking about government regulation, forcing businesses to close, Larry?
Well,
and how do you differentiate, how do you force private businesses to
I
close
understand.
down? Well, I'm just saying, give us a week, and that's why, because
That's a good
people who
point,
work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, it's really difficult to take
Right.
time off and go, particularly if lines are long,
Right.
when Republicans have cut Board of Elections, and there are less machines. That's why, to me, a week's important to give people flexibility depending on their work schedule. But
Well,
yeah.
I would agree, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, because it is regulation, but I still think if it was a national holiday that everybody would have off to vote, I think would do that. But, you know, I think that would be a solution. But I just hate to go from Election Day, all Americans, you know, going to the polls in their communities, you see everybody walking to the polls, and changing that to election season. Then it's like trolling for votes, you know, this is a different aspect to it. And there's no way you can ever, if you can go and sign up people in their homes and fill out things and bring it, there's no way you can ever guarantee the sanctity of that. Because I feel that that's really a big deal. I mean, who somebody votes for, obviously I want them to vote for our side, but it's more important they get to vote for who they want, and with nobody else knowing who they vote for. So that's a sacred thing, and I would just hate to ever jeopardize that. That's more important, you know, in the end.
Let me turn quickly to Ruth Jordan versus Brantley Moody.
We think that Moody's one of our best candidates, but, you know, that's, you know, we hope we win that. We've gone all out and everything we know to do again. So, but that'll be an indicator of which way the county's going.
Okay.
If Ruth Jordan wins, that's a pretty good indication that we are turning Democrat. And if Moody wins, I think it's a pretty good indication we're still a Republican county. So that's an exciting race to watch.
It is.
The Moffley one,
Right.
and Andy Smith. Those are pretty much
Peter Tecklenburg.
right.
Yeah.
Are the three that matter tomorrow that are really contested. Am I missing any? And we think maybe Carrie O'Neill and
Right.
Lee Edwards, but I don't know. I mean, that's
I think those are less contested. The only other one I'd throw in that's mostly not Charleston, but it touches Charleston,
Right.
is KJ Kearney, who's
Oh,
running
yeah.
against Samuel Rivers.
Right.
And that's a seat
That's
that we
true.
think will be very close. We think we can win that. And certainly, if not now, 2018, you know, Samuel Rivers is in for some heat.
well, we think that's one we'll still win, but that's another one.
Yeah.
And let me
So-
talk to you about Congressman Mark Sanford versus Dimitri Turney.
Yeah.
Right.
I think, again, the competition is a good thing, and you know, I think Congressman Sanford has served us for a long time, and I think one of the questions is, what are his future political aspirations? There's been a lot of rumors that he wants to be back in the governor's mansion or things like that, so we'll have to see what his path is.
I feel pretty safe on that one. I
Okay.
mean, the other one, I think one of his platforms was to transfer the population of planet Earth to planet Xenon or something, so I don't know, you know, what that's at. And he has Bernie Sanders tattooed somewhere
Right,
on him.
right.
So, you know, I don't know, but I feel pretty safe about that. I think that, you know, Sanford's a changed person since whatever happened before. You know, I think he's,
He's done hiking for now.
right. Well, I think he's a pretty safe bet to win, you know, it's, honestly.
Let me turn to Thomas Dixon versus Senator Tim Scott.
To me, that's a really fascinating race for any number of reasons. To have two African-American men running, I think, is really just fascinating from a historical perspective to have them there. And that they both have really interesting personal backstories that have some level of conversion in terms of how they came to their personal beliefs. To me, that's been a really interesting race to watch. And again, I think that no matter who it is, I think it's good to have competition and have someone run against, you know, an incumbent.
I think that that's another one I feel pretty safe in
Okay.
predicting the outcome, that, you know, Tim is a future president or vice president. I think that's, you know, where he'll end up. I think that, and I'd like to say for him, I was his attorney
Right.
and his mother in
Right.
high school, and he's
Right.
exactly the same person now as he was then. That's the highest praise I can think of somebody. He's he's not affected, he's a genuine person, and that appeals to people. But he brings up an interesting point that, about in terms of the race and everything else, if you look at the Republican Party in South Carolina, our governor's parents were born in India, she was born a Sikh. The new chairman of the Republican Party in Berkeley County is Hispanic.
Right.
I'm Jewish, our senator is African American. I think that in terms of the appeal is that we all have in common that we look upon America as we're individual citizens. And what happens, I would say that the changing demographics of America is irrelevant as long as everybody feels they're individual citizens, and our job is to people to buy into that, and that's what America is about. If it's just, what group you are or whatever, that's not our vision of America. It shouldn't matter what group you are, and that's a different way. I think that the Democratic Party, and this is why I became a Republican when I was in law school, and I'd worked my way through law school as a private investigator. I wanted to be an FBI agent, ironically.
Wow.
And I said, this was under Carter, and I was a Democrat at the time. I said, no, we won't take your application. I said, what do you mean? That I wasn't from the right background because, and I said, well, I'm Jewish. How many FBI agents are like that? Well, that's not acceptable. And I said, well, my mother's family came from Lithuania.
Right.
That's not good enough. My father's family came from what was originally Poland. That wasn't good enough.
Wow.
And that, to me, is unacceptable because where we came from, they had quotas and we weren't allowed to own land, work in government or anything. And I refuse to accept in America that any government person can make those choices or look at you as anything other than what you are. And we're the party that ensures that, and Brady would differ, but my honest perception is that the way to power is division and kind of conquer on the other side. That we were different on it, but that's how I experienced it and how I perceive it. And in no way should you ever government bureaucrat determine what they do with you depending, and I saw that in the Charleston County School Board when we had the quotas abused, which I've taken heat for, but we had people sitting around the table and the man and woman were of different backgrounds, and we had to make a decision what the child looked like, and that's when I walked out of the room, said, this is not acceptable in America, I'm going to end this, and I did end it.
Okay.
And we differed because that's probably what moved me to become a Republican. I got acceptance for that, and every Democrat opposed me and said that was wrong or racist to not go along with that. And I thought it was the opposite, to look at somebody's child and make a decision of what to do with them. I mean, who you marry is none of our business, and what you look like is even less. I mean, and that's where
Except that
strong
your party has for decades opposed gay marriage, so they do care who you marry. I think as Democrats we look at this as that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that we are all tied. Individuality is key and critical and a cornerstone of being an American. But the way Democrats look at this is that we're all in this together. When Charleston does better, when the Charleston economy improves under Democratic mayors, what happens is that people get better, higher paying jobs. We see that as a plus. Under President Obama, what we see is that when people have health insurance, they don't go to the emergency room as much. And when they do, that used to end up, taxpayers would foot that bill. We see this as a way to bridge community and pull people together. Individuality is key, but what we see is that community is also important and that we're all tied together.
Let me write this headline really quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, on November 9th, Donald Trump will be
president.
On November 9th, Hillary Clinton will be.
She will be the president and Donald Trump will still be a laughingstock.
Well, with that said,
Well, we think that also, with all due respect, that the email thing, apparently they're not going to do anything. I still think there's the Clinton Foundation, and no matter what happens, if she's elected, there'll be a thing I think from my perspective, there's enough there to ask for a special prosecutor, and I think they will get that if the Republicans retain control of the Senate and House, and that will be a nightmare situation for the country. But that, I think that nobody knows what's going to happen. That when we see this after the election, it'll be clear, because it just, and I'm sure Brady will have another perspective. We both have gone all out, and we're sensing a lot of, I think there's an enthusiasm gap this time, because you clearly had that for President Obama 4 and 8 years ago was something new, and there was historical reason. There was tremendous enthusiasm.
Just like there is now for the first female president.
We see it a little differently. I see that people that, there wasn't that for Romney. You went dutifully, but I think for those who believe in Trump, there's like they really feel they're going to drain the swamp. And as I talk to Democrats, they feel, well, she's somewhat ethically challenged, but they fear who Trump is because of his personality and so forth from their perspective. And, you know, in my perspective is it's less important how he acts and what is at stake for the country and the Supreme Court and the policies and appointments. So that's what we don't know. We don't know which enthusiasm, are there enough new voters for those who maybe are turned off by his personalities? Is the enthusiasm new voters outweigh that? And with locally, how is that going to turn out? I talked to Brady about this. How many of the Democrats who maybe have doubts about Hillary are going to vote for the third party candidates? Or is that, you know, we don't know that. Because they can make a statement here because they know who they vote for here. If you're a Democrat, if you vote for the Libertarian or the Green Party, it's not going to affect the presidency. So from our perspective, we hope that there's going to be a lot there, that it changes somewhat the equation, but we don't know.
Yeah, I think, anyway, I know we need to wrap it up, but I think that there are a couple of things we can count on. I mean, yes, we don't have a crystal ball to predict the future, but I think Hillary Clinton is very likely to be the president as of 25 hours from now.
Okay.
But I think the other thing that we can guarantee is that for the next 4 or 8 years, as President Clinton is in office, Republicans will bring up absurd investigation after absurd investigation. So I agree with Larry that they will come up with special prosecutors and all sorts of things. You know, this is something that when we look at historical trends and learn that, you know, history repeats itself, Hillary Clinton will be a great president for the economy, and Republicans will try and prosecute her at every step of the way because that's sort of how these things seem to work out.
Wow.
Well, I'll say one thing.
Go for it. Go for
You
it.
got to get the last word.
No, I'm going to say like positive that obviously we differ about that. We believe in the rule of law, but on a positive note, I want to say that Brady and I will be together almost from 6 o'clock in the morning to probably midnight, and we'll model civility. And we disagree, but we'll try to. I think it's more important than ever that we show civility. And it'll be hard for both of us because, you know, I know how I'll feel if Hillary's ahead, and I imagine if Trump's ahead that he'll have equal problems, but I think that it's incumbent upon us to model civility and acceptance no matter what happens. So I promise to do my best. I think Brady will.
I'll try my best too.
But it's going to be difficult for either of us because I'm sure our emotions, and also, you know, we'll be seeing real time what happens to all of our efforts to win the county. So there's a lot at stake because we're both chairman at the time when it is a time in flux.
Okay.
And we'll see how that turns out tomorrow.
We'll see. Well, Larry Kobrovsky and Brady Quirk-Garvan, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No,
Thanks so much,
honored that
Quintin.
you asked
Thank you.
us. Thank you.
Thanks again, Quintin.
Thank you.